In the fall of 2008, a man named Hunter Hogan quietly posted his first videos onto YouTube. At the time, there was no blood, no hospitals, and no scars. Just an articulate man with a webcam and a plan. His early content was focused on economics, specifically the housing crisis that had thrown America into a recession. Here's how to fix the mortgage collapse, he claimed, laying out detailed fiscal proposals and policy suggestions. He came across as intelligent, rational, and focused. The kind of person who might teach a university class or publish a niche think piece. There was no trace of desperation, instability, or pain. And it made sense. Hunter wasn't just another internet commentator. He had the background to speak with authority. He was born in Texas in 1975. He'd studied physiology and computer systems in college before going on to law school in Chicago. Eventually, he earned his license to practice law in the state of Illinois. And by 2009, he was working as the sole assistant state's attorney in Carroll County, a job with real responsibility and real weight. And by all outward appearances, Hunter Hogan was an educated, capable man, someone who had pulled himself up and was headed toward a stable, successful life. But as we'll come to learn, this wasn't a beginning, it was the edge of a cliff. Because just a few months into his new position, Hunter made a decision that would change everything. Hunter Hogan's life looked stable in 2009. He was newly employed as the assistant state's attorney in Carroll County, a respected legal position with real authority. For most, this would have marked the beginning of a promising legal career. But for Hunter, it would mark the beginning of the end. One of the first major cases he was assigned involved a teenage girl, Justine, who had reportedly been physically and sexually abused by her ex-boyfriend. It was a sensitive, emotional case, and one that required professional distance. But the line between professional and personal didn't hold for long. According to Hunter, Justine developed an attachment to him, and he later claimed that he recognized this and requested to be removed from the case. The request was granted with one clear condition: no further contact with Justine or her family. But instead of backing away, Hunter reinserted himself. When Justine's mother, Naomi, fell ill, he visited her, he sent texts, and kept the connection alive. It's unclear if this was a lapse in judgment or a calculated disregard for boundaries, but around the same time he crossed another line that couldn't be explained as compassion. He began seeing Karen, a 19-year-old woman he had just prosecuted in court. And even if legal, it was deeply unethical. And when his superiors found out, they gave him an ultimatum: resign or be fired. Hunter would choose resignation. But the story doesn't stop there. Not long after walking away from his job, he reconnected with Justine, the girl from the earlier case. She was now 17, and he was 35. And soon after, they were living together. Whether it began emotional support or something more, power imbalance was undeniable. Justine was vulnerable, and Hunter had once been her legal advocate. And now he was her roommate. And soon, something far more complicated. After moving in with Justine, the tone of Hunter Hogan's life and his online presence shifted dramatically. What had once been a public-facing career was now replaced by personal blog entries, Facebook rants, and a growing fixation on reclaiming his reputation. On the surface, he still presented himself as a victim, someone forced out of his career for minor infractions. But behind the scenes, serious consequences were unfolding. In 2012, the Attorney Registration Disciplinary Commission formally revoked Hunter Hogan's law license. The ruling was clear. His conduct had been unprofessional, unethical, and potentially criminal. But Hunter wasn't ready to take responsibility. In blog posts that are still archived to this day, he insisted he had done nothing wrong. In one entry he wrote, "I didn't commit a crime or ethical violation. I'm only ashamed these events became public." He was not ashamed of his own actions. He was ashamed that people found out. The implication was chilling, that he still didn't believe he had crossed a line, and that his downfall was the product of exposure, not guilt. And around this same time, Hunter attempted something unexpected. He tried to leave the United States. In the June of 2014, he flew to the United Kingdom and applied for political asylum, claiming the US had failed him, both medically and legally. His application was rejected. He was detained and deported back to the United States. And according to Hunter, the only reason he survived during this period was thanks to the help of friends. But whatever support remained wasn't enough to stop the collapse. By the end of 2014, his relationship with Justine was unraveling. In that December, Hunter posted a blog update and Facebook status claiming that Justine had gone missing and vanished right before her 21st birthday. But the story wasn't true. Justine later clarified that her phone was broken and that she hadn't gone anywhere. And in fact, all of her friends had known where she was the entire time. And whether this was a misunderstanding, manipulation, or paranoia, it's hard to say. But it would be one of the last times Justine's names appeared on his website, and one of the final threads tying him to his past. And from this point on, Hunter Hogan wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a public servant. He was something else entirely. And by the time he resurfaced, he would be living on the street with a camera and a scalpel. By 2015, Hunter Hogan was isolated. His law license was gone, and his relationship with Justine had just fractured. And now his online presence has shifted from professional blog posts to professional manifestos. But one name kept appearing again and again in his writing: Dan Hogan, his father. At first it seemed like Dan was one of the few people still trying to help. Emails between them, later published by Hunter himself, showed Dan offering money, housing suggestions, and ideas for therapy. In one exchange, Dan offered to pay for a residential treatment program in Mexico. The facility promised assistance with daily living, cooking, cleaning, and even therapy. And Hunter agreed, but only on two strict conditions. Dan would not have access to any of Hunter's medical records, and Dan would never be told his location of the facility. And Dan violated both. He sent an email to the treatment center introducing himself, offering to tour the facility and outlining his plan to visit with his wife, and he copied Hunter onto the message. And this would make Hunter explode. He accused Dan of trying to buy control, of using money to manipulate his life and invade his privacy, and in a furious email he wrote, "You don't get to purchase any knowledge of my life. You will continue to cross my boundaries just as you've committed multiple crimes in the past 6 years." The deal was now off. It's hard to say if Dan meant any harm, and from the outside it reads like the actions of a concerned parent who is clumsy but doesn't seem to be malicious. But to Hunter, this was proof of betrayal, evidence that he was being controlled, monitored, and even hunted by the people who claimed to care. This wasn't an isolated incident. According to the emails posted on Hunter's website, his father offered financial help multiple times, each time being met with anger, accusations, and rejection. Even when Dan proposed options that might have improved Hunter's life, Hunter saw ulterior motives in every gesture. Some have said that Hunter finds a problem with every solution and that he self-sabotages, that he pushes away the people trying to pull him out of the hole. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's trauma, or maybe it's something else entirely. But one thing is clear. By 2018, Hunter Hogan didn't trust anyone. Not his father, not the legal system, and not the people who try to help. And soon, that isolation would reach a horrifying peak when Hunter decided to take matters into his own hands. Hunter Hogan reappeared online in 2018. His new video was jarring, not for the content, but for the context. It was titled, "Disabled Homeless Man Robbed While Sleeping." The video showed Hunter's face for the first time in a decade. The once clean-cut prosecutor was now gone. The polished man with a webcam and economic theories was gone. Now he looked tired, unshaven, and hollow. He spoke softly, recounting how someone had stolen his food while he slept beside a bench.
I just woke up. Here's where I'm sleeping. So, you see the bench is here, and then I'm sleeping here, and my backpack is here under the bench, and I'm in front of it, and the main pocket is facing down, so it's difficult for someone to open it while I'm sleeping, which has happened.
The video didn't go viral and it didn't make any headlines, but it marked a shift. This wasn't just a man venting online. This was a man documenting his deterioration in real time. And over the next 2 years, Hunter continued uploading. Some videos were filmed inside, suggesting at times that he may have found temporary shelter. But his circumstances didn't improve. His health, mental and physical, began to visually decline. And his content was starting to change. The tone became darker and more urgent. He talked about being in pain, needing medicine, and feeling abandoned. The frustration that had once been directed at the legal system was now directed at the world. He spoke less like a man looking for solutions, and more like someone warning us, someone unraveling. And in hindsight, these videos were warning signs. Because what came next wasn't just a cry for help. In late 2020, Hunter began uploading videos that were different, grim and graphic. Kind of footage that people thought couldn't be real. Hunter Hogan was about to perform surgery on himself. In late 2020, Hunter Hogan crossed a threshold that most people could never even imagine. He began uploading videos of himself performing graphic, invasive surgery on his own body. These weren't dramatizations, and they were no props, no disclaimers, and no attempts to hide the pain. They were real. And one of the most disturbing videos showed Hunter attempting to cut open a tumor on his chest, like a growth, likely a lipoma, a benign fatty mass. It was large, roughly 10 to 15 centimeters wide. He sliced into it with a scalpel, groaning audibly as blood poured from the wound.
I think I got tissue. I don't think that hurt. The pain was from something else.
He paused only to apply what looks to be numbing cream, but it didn't seem to help. He claimed to have sterilized the blade with a flame and alcohol. but his so-called surgery room was a cluttered living space with no gloves, no mask, and no sterile equipment. And after partially removing the mask, he tried to stitch the wound shut using just 4 sutures, and they wouldn't hold. The wound gaped open again, and he gave up midway through. His breathing became erratic, and blood would run down his chest. He didn't just post these videos onto YouTube, he promoted them. Some were hosted on his website behind a membership paywall with captions explaining that these self-surgeries were a result of poverty, disability, and a failed medical system. And in a way, Hunter framed these acts as political acts of protest. He claimed that if he had proper medical access, these surgeries would never have happened. And maybe that's true, but something about these videos just felt off. Because even though he was in clear agony, he kept filming, and he kept posting, and he kept cutting. It's possible that Hunter believed that he had no other choice, and it's also possible that he found something else in these videos: attention, control, a platform. But whatever the reason was, one thing was clear. It was no longer just a story about a man in pain, it was about a man unraveling on camera and daring the internet to look away. As Hunter Hogan's self-surgery videos began to circulate in obscure corners of the internet, a new wave of viewers discovered his channel. Some were sympathetic and some were horrified, but very few knew the full story. Because behind the blood and desperation, there was something far darker. An anonymous blog began to surface on an archived document of Hunter's early life, career, and the decisions that led up to his downfall. And according to the author, and confirmed by Hunter in the past, the blog tells the real story. It claims that Hunter was born in Texas in 1975, raised primarily by his mother. He moved often and blamed his father for the instability. But still, he did well in school, eventually majoring in psychology, minoring in computer systems, and later studied law in Chicago. But none of this is mentioned in Hunter's current content. Nothing about his kids, nothing about his marriage, only about his father and the system that he says betrayed him. As previously mentioned, Hunter's legal license was revoked for unethical conduct. But the reason is what many viewers, especially those who only found him through his graphic videos, never knew: his relationship with Justine. Justine would later defend Hunter online, writing blog posts claiming that she was the one who pursued him and not the other way around. Those posts have since been deleted, and not long after, she cut off contact. And then came a comment, a blog post allegedly written by Justine's sister, detailing what life with Hunter was really like. According to her, he was controlling, he was manipulative, and he shaved Justine's dogs, used her money, refused to get a job, and made her feel trapped. But one sentence stood out: men should never put their hands on women. And if this is true, this would confirm what many feared: that Hunter Hogan wasn't just a victim of a system failure or mental illness, he may have been an abuser too. It's impossible to verify every detail, and the blog post can be faked. Comments can lie, but one fact remains: Hunter Hogan was a 35-year-old prosecutor who entered a romantic relationship with a teenage girl connected to a case he worked on. And even years later, he never seemed to understand why people found that so wrong. Today, Hunter Hogan still exists online, but not in the way most creators do. His YouTube channel is active, but many of his videos are locked behind a paywall. Some are private, and others vanish after a few days. And what's left are fragments, scattered moments of a man still trying to explain himself, still trying to be heard. He continues to ask for donations through PayPal, Patreon, and Ko-Fi. He claims that a portion of the money goes to helping other people experiencing homelessness or medical crises. People just like him. But there's no verification and there's no transparency. But what's more clear is that Hunter is still struggling. His mental health appears to have deteriorated. His trust in others is almost non-existent, and he occasionally lashes out online. He still posts about his father, and he still talks about how the world abandoned him, and now his content just feels different. There's fatigue in his voice now, a weight, like someone who's no longer trying to rebuild, just trying to survive. And for some, he's a tragic figure, a man failed by the healthcare system, driven to extremes to stay alive. And for others, he's an abuser, hiding behind suffering, and using his misfortune as a shield from accountability. And the truth is, it's likely both. There are people like Hunter Hogan all over the internet, people who once had stable lives and fell through the cracks, and who have dragged others down with them along the way. Some are victims, some are monsters, and some are both. And if you never saw the videos of a man slicing into his own skin, you'd never know the story that came before it. And it's also tempting to view him as something far darker, a man who abused power, blurred ethical lines, and hurt people who trusted him. In many ways, what Hunter represents is something we don't often talk about. What happens when someone falls from grace but never acknowledges why? He was disbarred for misconduct, and he still claims he wasn't wrong. He lost his job, his home, and his stability. And instead of reckoning with his past, he turned the camera inward. There is a tragedy in the story, but the tragedy doesn't erase any guilt. And the suffering doesn't absolve the harm. Hunter Hogan is not just a man in pain, he's a man who caused pain while never fully owning it. If you've only seen his graphic videos, if you've only heard his side of the story, then you haven't seen the full picture. And maybe that's the most disappointing part of it all. This video isn't a call to arms, it's not a witch hunt, and it's just a reminder that the internet shows us what people want us to see, and sometimes what they don't show is where the real truth lies.